Welcome to Motorsport UK's 2024 Club Webinar. I'm Paul Woodford, rally commentator and club competitor. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by David Richards, Chair of Motorsport UK, and Hugh Chambers, Chief Executive Officer from Motorsport UK's impressive headquarters here in Bicester. David, you've travelled back a long way to be with us this evening. You've been in the heart of the action in the Dakar, and we've seen a glorious battle between two of the sport's greats. Just how exciting was it to be up close to that battle between Loeb and Sainz?
I'm still catching up on my sleep at the moment. It's 2 weeks travelling around Saudi Arabia chasing these cars, but and to be fair, what the drivers do in that event is quite extraordinary. And at 61 years of age, Carlos Sainz just proving it's not the youngsters that are quickest. You've got to be quite intelligent and get the car to the finish on that event.
Congratulations on your car as well. It's been a baptism of fire for it. We're never far away from the era of Colin McRae and Richard Burns, and not least here at Motorsport UK, where you walk past that iconic 555 Peltor helmet. I grew up as a fan of the sport during that era. What was the magic? What made that era so special, do you think?
You know, Colin was an iconic character, and I think Richard played off it as well. When Richard came on the scene, it's a pitched battle between the two Brits, and it was to be around at that time and to see how it captured the imagination of the British public, not just the motorsport public, but you know, it was on the front page of newspapers at times, and I look back with a certain amount of nostalgia, but also at the same time thinking, how is it we can try and recreate that again?
It was a real magic, wasn't it? I remember it well, rushing home from school. To tonight's Motorsport UK Club webinar then, it's a really important opportunity for the organisation to engage directly with its clubs, with you, the stakeholders, and thank you for bringing us your questions in advance. We'll put those to David and Hugh through the evening, so you will hear from some of our clubs directly. We'll also have an opportunity for you to put your questions to us during the webinar. If you scroll down to the page that you're watching this video, there's a form to fill in where you can submit your question, and we'll select one or two during the evening to put to David and Hugh, time allowing, because we've got a busy agenda to get through. Now, we'll focus on a variety of aspects of Motorsport UK: clubs, rallying, club motorsport, venues, volunteering, sustainability, and we'll have a glance ahead as well at what's to come in 2024. But first, David, if we can start with you again, just go back to last year, a big year for Motorsport UK, but what was the key focus for you and your board here at Motorsport UK?
I think that, you know, it's not so long ago we came out of COVID, and remember that sort of really stopped everything in its tracks. And although having said that, I think motorsport managed far better than most other sports in this country. And I look back and think how I was so proud of the fact that so many of our volunteers and our clubs got involved in local activities, helping people locally. And it was, but it was a tough period, and it took a while for us to come back from that. But license numbers have continued to sort of rise again. I think this year again, I'm sure we're going to exceed those license numbers. Permits went out, and we came back, and that was the real priority. How do we recover from that difficult period of time? And then we set ourselves some very specific targets as a board. We were looking at venues and how I know lots of clubs will be looking at their current venues and thinking, how do we retain these? How do we keep them going for the future? And volunteers, how do we get back to and really encourage and help and train volunteers for the future?
Hugh, talking of venues, here we are in Motorsport UK's glorious HQ. It's the first time I've been here as an independent journalist and a stakeholder of our sport, like the people watching with us this evening. I wanted to spend the afternoon just getting a feel for things here and understanding what you do here. And I've been impressed by the scope of it, but just give us a flavour of what goes on here and how that impacts our motorsport community.
Well, Motorsport UK really has changed a lot in the last 5 years, and the principle behind it is really to make us member focused. You know, we're here to serve the community, and part of that is making sure that we're accessible. So this building here is in frankly a much better location than being down in the flight path of Heathrow, and it's allowed us to attract I think a vibrant young community of people, our staff, and you've been here today meeting a lot of them, and I think you'd agree that there's some really enthusiastic and bright young people. We've retained a lot of the expertise and the knowledge within the building, but it's inevitable as we move location that there would be a changeover. So there has been some people that have left, and There are a lot of people that have joined. So in that transition period, there's probably quite a lot of change that's gone on. But I think we're now settling down with that new cohort. A lot of investment in new areas and within the staff, areas which pretty much didn't exist 5 or 6 years ago, such as safeguarding. But at the core of that, it's looking after our clubs and the communities. We've just hired a new head of cross-country, and Steve Blakeman has joined us just this week. Comes from the community, but also a professional background. And so we have 4 heads of the different sporting disciplines reporting into John Ryan. And I think that's really going to bear fruit as we go down the line. And so we have that structure to look after it. We now have expanded our safety team. We've expanded some of the ancillary areas in learning and development. And altogether, everything that we generate in terms of revenue, we plough back into the sport. We're not for profit, and it's all about the members.
Very easy for Hugh to say, but I can genuinely say the passion and the aligned vision, 2 very important things for sport or business, both come across very clearly walking around this building. It's all very well having the team, but you both know that to have the team performing is the real thing. So what is being delivered from here?
You know, there's such a vast array of different things that we are delivering and working on the projects at any one time. And I think one of the complexities of motorsport is the array of different disciplines. We describe it with 13 different disciplines, including esports now. And each one of those different disciplines has specific challenges, whether they're technological challenges or they're venue challenges or sporting challenges. And so some elements that we look at, so karting takes up a great deal of our time, but of course it's quite secular and it's very much focused on teenage kids, and it's the pathway into circuit racing. But probably the rally community are not desperately interested in karting. So you often only see one aspect of what we do if you're particularly focused on a particular discipline, circuit racing or karting or drag racing, for example. But one example I would give would be the scrutineering vehicle database, which is something that came out of COVID, where we had to have self-declaration for the scrutineering of vehicles turning up to events. And that proved very successful and very popular. But what we realized was that if we were going to continue with the ability for people to declare whether a vehicle had met the requirements, which is in the regulations, I mean, I'd emphasize that it is the responsibility of the competitor or the entrant to do so. In order to be able to do that, we need to keep a record or a track of the vehicles and when they'd last been checked by a scrutineer. So the development of a vehicle scrutineering database has been absolutely crucial to that. That was trialled last year. It's going to be rolled out this year, and I think it's going to revolutionize the experience for competitors in the paddock and also for our scrutineers, who then are able to take a lot more time on individual vehicles instead of just literally a few minutes quickly checking the belts. They can actually have a more in-depth look. Another example is Motorsport UK TV. This is something that does apply across all the different disciplines, and I'm sure something that you spent a few hours going through, scrolling through. We were up for an award this afternoon. I think, David, you were down in London at an award ceremony. Sadly, we didn't make the top step, but we were shortlisted by The Race, which is one of the big media channels, for Brand of the Year, and I think that's a great accolade. The British Championships, we spend a great deal of our energy and effort, and I know one of the questions that the clubs have asked us in the past was, is this a drain on your resources, and indeed is it a drain on your money? The reality is that all of the championships you see up on the screen here are actually positive net generators of revenue for the sport. In other words, they all make profit, and all that goes back into the sport. It goes back into the benefit of club motorsport.
It really feels like a governing body that's gone from looking in from the top to supporting from the bottom, which has come across clearly today.
And you know, there's another example here, which is the F1 Academy Discover Your Drive, and this is really a bold move on our part, working with Susie Wolf and all the work that she's doing with Formula One to get young girls into motorsport through indoor karting. And I think that's a really bold initiative that we took a few years ago, was to say, let's embrace indoor karting. You know, previously it was viewed as the leisure industry, nothing to do with us. And you've got 1.5 million customers going through team sports locations every year. We now issue indoor kart licenses for those that want to take it more seriously. And we've created the British Indoor Kart Championship, which has 5,500 competitors every year.
It's the biggest motorsport championship in the world now.
Absolutely.
And it, you know, a few years ago, people looked at indoor karting with certain disdain, but this is actually, it's inner cities, it's appealing to a diverse group of people that we weren't talking to before, and who knows, from that, there could come the next Lewis Hamilton.
I did turn up and have a go. I didn't qualify. The Motorsport UK club community is bustling with activity. David, your rally career started and your most recent outing was in Club Motorsport in the Circuit Rally Championship, a small matter of a World Championship in between. What role do clubs have to play in the future of motorsport?
I still believe that clubs are the beating heart of motorsport in this country. It's where it all starts out, and without the clubs, I think we wouldn't have the diversity of motorsport that we have today. Some clubs maybe organise just half a dozen events in the year. Some of them are there for social purposes, but they actually are the bedrock. And I can remember when I first joined my local motor club in North Wales, and I was so proud to get that club membership card and be part of that community, shared experiences and all the things that we benefited from.
They are so vital to what we do. As David says, Hugh, clubs and that social element, that heart of clubs is so important to motorsport. But what is Motorsport UK doing to support our clubs?
Well, we have a dedicated team led by Claire Kirkpatrick, and I'm sure many of the people online this evening know Claire and very much respect the work that she and Sophia and Benny are all doing with the community and working with the various committees, relevant committees such as Regional Committee. But in addition to that, they're now taking over responsibility for actually registering the club, so building that relationship, which had been held by clubs and competitions. So that shifted across, which I think has been very successful. We have a club development fund, so clubs can apply to Motorsport UK to get grants. We don't ask for the money back, it's not a loan. So you can get thousands of pounds for projects within your club. Outside of the clubs and community side, we've got the technical help desk, and I think we've really changed the way that we approach that. We have a system of software which is Freshdesk, which I hope the feeling that it's from the community, certainly that's what I'm told, is that our response rates are better. We get back and we answer questions, and I've got a passionate team led by Ian Smith and all that side. We've got club accreditations, so people can earn, for example, sustainability accreditations and get different star grades and can be assessed for. I think working with the clubs and with the communities, the work that we're doing with the NCRs, the National Competition Rules, which we'll touch on a little bit later, is going to revolutionise the access to the rules and the regulations. It's always been a bit of a mystery, hasn't it, as what lies within that big blue book.
Fair to say that you've kept in mind that the people running these clubs are very busy. They run businesses, they have full-time jobs, and they're doing this voluntarily. Everything you've done is a very realistic process, isn't it? They can all get involved. It's very accessible.
Well, I think one of the maxims that we use is that the sport should be safe and fair, and it's fairly evident that that's important, but it also should be fun, because 99.9% of our competitors are paying for it out of their own pocket. And if there's too much red tape, too much bureaucracy, if it's just too much like hard work, then they're going to go off and do something else. That's not to say that you don't have to have a certain amount of structure and processes and systems to keep it safe and to keep it fair, but we try and minimize that and do as much as possible digitally.
Well, I think I think the important part, you mentioned competitors, it's got to be fun for the officials and the organisers as well. They've got to take some compliments for this as well, because the effort that they put in and the work that goes behind some of these events is just extraordinary.
It is, they are real life heroes, and we do celebrate you at every opportunity if you're one of those people. Now, we did invite questions ahead of tonight's session, and the first one's from Sam Ollis from Condor MSC, who sent us this. We live in a digital world now, so what plans are there to modernise the licence process? David, I'll come to you. What is the future of the licence process? Will we be going fully digital?
Well, already our RS Clubman licences are digital, so there's the starting point.
And free.
And free as well, I should have mentioned that. But we are on a digital pathway at the moment, and by next year, Hugh can speak far better than I can about the rollout of this, but by next year we will have a real rollout of digital processes throughout the organisation.
Hugh?
Yeah, we're embarking on a massive CRM program at the moment, CRM, Customer Relationship Management System. I'm sure that the clubs have felt frustrated, and the officials and volunteers, with our system that we've had for many years now, and it is, to put it politely, clunky. And that is a result of a lot of bespoke software that's been written to try and address problems. And it's too complicated, it's not user-friendly. And we recognise that we have to start with a completely new platform. And we feel that we've now got the right solution for that.
And it's not just digital, but actually connecting clubs, isn't it? It's creating that community using the opportunities of digital platforms.
Yeah, I think, you know, and we've gone out and consulted with the clubs and with the competition secretaries, and what everybody wants is one portal that you can go into. And so that, for example, for marshals to be able to see where there are events online and be able to register online for those events and where they're taking place.
Now, one of the things, as I mentioned, that we like to do is celebrate our clubs at every opportunity, and that comes across in everything that Motorsport UK have been telling me today about the operation behind the scenes. Every year you do come together with the clubs, and there's a variety of awards, and the Club of the Year is a group of people that have been pioneers in delivering pathways into the sport for young drivers, organising taster days in the case of this year's winner. So David, who is the winner of this coveted award for 2023?
Well, this year I can announce it's Maidstone and Mid-Kent Motor Club. And congratulations to you all.
We caught up with Liz Jordan, who's the chair of the Maidstone and Mid-Kent Motor Club at the Autosport International.
I'm Liz Jordan. I'm the chair of Maidstone and Mid-Kent Motor Club. We're based in Kent and we've just won the Motorsport UK Club of the Year 2023. Everybody in the club's been absolutely over the moon of winning the award. I think several of them have said to me, but we don't organise any big events. But what we do, we organise an awful lot of clubman events and a lot of variety of events throughout the year. And I think it recognises everybody's contribution. I think one of the things that was a highlight when I was putting our application together, what we do is we have a pathway for young drivers in auto testing. We're recognised as a leading club in the sport of auto testing. People who can start from the beginning and work all the way through. And we really do encourage junior drivers as well. We give them a lot of help and support. Well, what we decided was, because we want to encourage junior drivers, we're going to use that as a pot of money to finance the entry fees for junior drivers on our events for as long as it lasts. So we hope we get lots and lots of junior drivers and it goes quickly, but that's what we thought we would do.
Fabulous to hear from Liz there. Thank you to Liz. And a real inspiration, hopefully, if you're running a club. The fact that they're putting the prize fund towards supporting young drivers is a real inspiration. Do reach out to Liz if you'd like to understand more. She'd love to hear from you. Now, as you can tell from my tie, rally is my passion. And like most of you in the UK, I love the WRC. Is it Elvin's year? We all hope so. Now, David, you're heading an FIA working group looking at the future of the World Rally Championship. What does that look like? What does that actually mean?
Well, early days to, you know, and I'll apologise, I'm being slightly discreet about what's going on behind the scenes, but Robert Reid and I, for some little time, have expressed our concerns about what's going on in the World Rally Championship. I think Monte Carlo got 7 of the leading cars, and that's it. And it has a trickle-down effect to national rallying as well, and our ability to run a World Championship rally in Britain. If there's not the profile for it, it's very difficult to raise the funds and to organise it. So we've set about having a careful look at what we think is the right direction to take. We've made our recommendations prior to Christmas. We've had further talks actually this week, and there's going to be a survey quickly going out in the next week from talking to the fans, talking to the manufacturers as well, and then we will make final decisions at the next World Motorsport Council at the end of February. And I think we can't have a championship that is so inaccessible to young drivers. It's so difficult to access these days to get at the top level of World Championship rallying, and that's one of our duties to the sport, is to make sure there is a pathway for young drivers. And I know, like you, I'll be cheering on Elvin this year, but we've only got one of those at the top level. We need more.
Absolutely, and to have 2 of our national treasures and our World Rally champions involved in that process, I'm sure you'll agree, gives us some hope for the future. Hugh, what everybody will want to know though is that's all well and good. We love the WRC. How does that impact here in the UK?
Well, I think many people will know Jonathan Jackson. He joined us 12 months ago. Jonathan is a fantastic, bright young man, and not only a talented co-driver, but also proving to be a fantastic leader for rallying in this country. And it's taken a little while, of course, for him to get his feet under the table and to get his arms around the whole of the sport. But I think everybody recognises that he's providing great strategic leadership, which is what we need, because rallying in this country for too long, it's evolved organically, and nobody's made any wrong decisions. Nobody's done things to try and make it complicated. It's just evolved because it's iterated and everybody's tried to be accommodated. When we looked at the top 8 championships in this country, there are 113 different classes, which by any stretch of the imagination is just far too convoluted and complex. But of course, if you ask any of the championships to remove any of those classes, they say, well, we'll lose competitors because we need to provide the product offering. So there need to be some tough choices that are taken in terms of that structure, and that's where I come back to strategy. You've got to start with your objective. Where do we want to get the sport to be in the next 10 years or the 15 years? And working with the rally committee is the way that that's been done, and a series of working groups have been set up. And you probably heard us talk about this a little bit last year, and you can see on the screen there's 7 different areas of those working groups have already been focused on. And each one of those is now making progress and is making development and getting the community on board. And that's absolutely crucial that we get everybody behind this, because we can't afford to divide. We need to make sure that we've got everybody united behind rallying. And it's firmly David and my commitment that rallying has got a bright future in this country.
I think, it's, I was brought up in rallying for the first event I ever did, 17 years of age. And anyone who thinks that the effort and the passion isn't going into this is very misled, because we are desperately trying to sort this out and trying to bring rallying back up to the right level in the UK. But just think to yourself some of the complications we've got. If you say that the car manufacturers are the key to this, that they produce the cars that we compete with and they do the homologation, the cars that we're running, B and C categories cars, they're all focused on electrification now. They're not looking at internal combustion engines. So we're sort of already stymied in that respect. And we've got to think of the environmental side as well. So there are lots of issues that come into play here. It's everyone says it must be easy to sort it out. I can assure you it is not. There's no magic wand here, but we are trying desperately to do it, and welcome to any further input from the clubs.
Interestingly, I was reading through the RAC Rally Guide for 1980, as someone like me would do the other day. Glorious picture of Russell Brooks in his sunbeam, but in that it talks about the state of UK and world rallying, and that is an era that we revere as being one of the very best. It's certainly one of the best for you, that era, David, but food for thought. We'll look back on this era and we'll probably be a little less critical, so it's probably important to be a little less critical now as well and to appreciate these efforts. But we do have to ask the burning question, Hugh, are we going to get a UK round of the World Rally Championship back?
We have to, don't we?
That's a good way to start.
No, and I would genuinely say that David and I, we've got so much vested in rallying all of our lives, and being successful enough at World Championship level, we are absolutely committed to getting it back. I think the frustrating thing for the community is they don't see any visible movement. They don't see us doing anything. I was actually in Scotland yesterday. I can't go into a lot of detail as to exactly who we were meeting with in government there, but I can absolutely assure everybody that we are pushing like crazy to make this happen. But as David says, you've got to have the right product to take to government. The government has got to be convinced that it's got the sustainability credentials, it's got the level of commercial support, it's got the level of fan support, it's got the level of manufacturer support, and you've got to tick all those different boxes. And then it's got to coincide with government policy of exactly what they want to do. And I think we're getting closer now to actually having something with a couple of the home countries where we've got a proposition which seems to be getting traction. The other thing that we're looking at is the whole format of a WRC event, which is part of the work that David is doing on a global level, which means that, can we actually do things in a simpler, lighter way, which means that there's less cost. And that's something that we're fighting very hard for. So no, we're not going to relent. We are not going to give up. We're going to get the WRC back.
And that's really positive here. I'm sure you will agree. But there's a good example of you I guess, putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to our domestic series, the British Rally Championship, because that has seen some changes, some in direct response to feedback and perhaps criticism of previous years, and you're putting a lot into that for 2024. Just give us a flavour of what we can look forward to in the BRC.
Yeah, the BRC, British Rally Championship, I mean, you know, second only to the WRC is very close to our heart. And you know, I think it's frustrating for everybody that when you look back onto its golden era, you know, what is it? Where has that gone? The reality is that it's become fractured. It's broken into lots of different pieces, and the BRC is a subset of other events, other rallies, as you know only too well. And those events themselves are very successful, but the BRC ends up being a subset of it rather than being necessarily the main show. And I think we need to resolve a lot of those strategic issues to bring it back up. But specifically for 2024, we've reduced the registration fee for the championship to make it easier and more accessible. We've listened to the competitors, listened to the teams and the entrants and to the event organisers. And I think we've got a championship now which is answering the popularity vote of where should we be and what should the championship look like. We're working very hard commercially. We've got a great new title sponsor in ProBite, a multi-year deal, and they've shown their faith in the championship. And I'm very hopeful that very shortly we're going to be announcing a major media deal as well, which is going to get the BRC back on screen, which is going to be really good news.
I'm delighted to hear that, and the top level of British rallying in all its forms and all its championships is certainly going through a renaissance as far as I'm concerned. Now, we have given you the opportunity to send in your questions this evening, and we have got one here. Now, this is from Andrew Little from 63 Car Club. With the recent loss of the Snowman Rally in Scotland, what are Motorsport UK doing to support rallying clubs access and manage repairs of forestry land? Hugh, one for you, because there's a real bit of work going on behind the scenes to bolster this area of the sport.
Yeah, you know, I think 5 years ago, if you'd asked me where would we be now in our relationship with the forestry estates, I was probably fairly pessimistic, to be honest. If you look at the sustainability agenda of governments and big institutions like the forestry estates, I think you'd be forgiven for thinking that they'd be probably keener to welcome mountain bikers than they would and hikers than they would rally cars. In fact, you know, and the team have to take credit for this, and the clubs and the organisers that have worked with us, because they've proven to those big forestry estates that we can be sustainable and that we're on a sustainability journey. And that's what they bought into. They recognised that we want to change and that we're going in the right direction. And they also recognise that there are big communities that love rallying and that they have to have a responsibility not just to those people with very obvious low impact like the hikers, but also the communities that are in Mid Wales or the communities in Scotland, you know, who actually prosper from having events that do take part in those forests. And so it's really good. We've got either long-term or on the brink of long-term agreements with the land agents in Wales, in Scotland, and in England. The Snowman Rally, it's unfortunate that we couldn't resolve the issues there in the short term, and therefore the event has had to move. But at the moment it is planned to run in October, which is great news. And we're working very hard, Jonathan and the team are working very, very hard with Forest and Land Scotland to make sure we have got all of those issues resolved in terms of road repairs and making it economically viable, because clearly at a certain point we've got to recognise that the entry fees have still got to be reasonable.
It can be quite, sorry David.
I was going to just interject there. We've talked about the forestry side, and it has been quite a challenge there to actually meet the environmental expectations of, you know, it's quite an ask. You turn up at a forest and say, we want to run our racing cars through your forest, and to persuade them that we can behave responsibly. And the clubs have done a great job of working with us to achieve that. But let's also not forget, in our term not so long ago, we've achieved closed public road legislation, and the opportunities for rallies in that environment is proven right across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that the opportunities and the future of rallying in the forests, though, is on an upward trajectory? Can we have some hope about the future, or are we having to sort of look at these other opportunities as that declines.
They complement each other.
Yeah.
I think, all right, historically, UK, because we couldn't close public roads, has been focused on forests, and the closed public roads has been over to Europe and Belgium and France and places. We now have an opportunity to do both, which is the best of both worlds.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of looking at it. Now, a new initiative was launched to much acclaim, actually, in the last year. Streetcar has seen a rise in RS, the RS Clubman, the lowest accessible motorsport license, to 13,000, the highest number ever, which we've all stood around the photocopier on a Monday morning and tried to explain to people we work with that car in the car park is actually a competition car, even though it's got no stickers or roll cage or anything else in it. But what do you think it is, David, that appeals so much about grassroots motorsport in that way?
It's I hark back to my early days, and I took my mother's car down to the local motor club, and I would be doing a 12. Probably not, actually. I told her my brother and I were going to the youth club. We disconnected the speedometer and so it didn't show the mileage, and off we went. And it was only when we took the side out of it on a bridge one night that we had to own up. But anyway, we used to take that car, a totally unsuitable car, I might add. We did 12-car rallies in it. We did car trials in it. We did auto tests in it. We did everything. And it was the car that she'd drive us to school in. So it's, and that's what Streetcar's all about. And it's about, I think there's a perception in the world at large, not with our clubs necessarily, but in the general public that, if you go motor racing, you've got to have a car like Lewis Hamilton, or you've got to have a sort of car with roll cage and all the safety equipment and all the costs associated with it. And we're trying to break that mold and say, no, motorsport is open to everyone, and it's an opportunity to come along, be part of it, and then grow with it. If you want to suddenly go off and decide to go something more exotic, then great, but you don't have to have anything special. You can join us on this streetcar journey.
Just in case my kids are watching, no. Dan Pearson from Anglia Motorsport Club got in touch with us ahead of the session. He wants to know, what does the future actually look like for streetcars? Is it going to stay as it is now? Are we going to see media coverage? Are you hoping to grow it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, streetcar, another thing, as everybody in the club community knows, it was very much a packaging of existing disciplines. And the reality is, at that grassroots level, there was never any collective promotion, and the clubs that put on an auto solo or a 12-car rally, they don't have a promotional budget. So the idea was that we'd put this into an envelope that Motorsport UK could promote. What we recognised was that probably the worst thing we could do is to go out to the general public at large and get thousands of people excited about this, and we didn't have a delivery mechanism. So it's fine that we had a product, but we needed to get clubs on board. So what we now have got is over 60 accredited clubs, and so you can see on the screen here, there's the logos. It looks fantastic, doesn't it?
It does.
Of all the clubs that have signed up to the Streetcar Charter. So we require clubs to make a commitment that they're going to welcome in newcomers, because it's all very well pointing newcomers in the direction of a club and they turn up there and nobody's got the time or the inclination to look after them and teach them about how to take part. And all these clubs have made that commitment, and I really do thank everybody in the streetcar community for everything that they're doing in that regard. Now we're at a point where we're actually looking at proper promotional campaigns going out to people who aren't currently in the motorsport community and stretching beyond that and start to draw people into grassroots motorsport.
There is a chance that the next Colin McRae, the next David Richards could come from the crop of streetcar competitors and enthusiasts that we're seeing. Will there be ways of linking that up to other pathways within various disciplines of the sport?
It's already there, isn't it? I mean, that is, as you say, how so many people, in fact, Sébastien Loeb and Sébastien Ogier came through the Rallye Jeune program in France, as you know, which is in car parks, and it was basically auto solos in car parks.
And one of the criticisms we've had of Motorsport UK in the past has been that, well, the French can do this, what are we doing? So it's there, it's begun.
Yeah, I think one of the exciting things, I mean, I think junior rallying is something that we want to really get back on the front foot with. And actually the work that, for example, Dave Pavley's doing with Silverstone Rally School, and he reports that an awful lot of his customers are coming in are 15, 16-year-old kids that are coming out of karting, because the karting pathway into single-seaters is just too expensive. And once they get in a rally car, front-wheel drive, 1000cc, go out on a rally school, they're like, why was I doing anything else? This is just absolutely fantastic. This is what I want to do. The other thing that the FIA are doing, and it's a little bit higher up the scale, is the Rally 5 category, which is front-wheel drive 1600cc cars. Very limited modifications indeed, very, very limited. They're now creating a new category, which is a Rally 5 kit, which can be homologated by the ASN, so the national governing body. And we're actively now looking at different manufacturers, different products that we can actually develop a Rally 5 kit for the UK.
Fantastic. So lots of ways of making all levels of the sport more accessible. I've got to mention, I was at a rally school called Rally Rise in Worcester the other day, where you can actually drive a rally car, a super impressive rally car, from the age of 8 with the help of dual controls. And Dan Petrie was the instructor and the person in control when my little 7-year-old actually had a go in that. But unbelievable that you're inspiring people as young as that to get in, which is fantastic. Now, it's all very well having these grassroots disciplines of the sport, but you need venues in order to operate them. At the beginning, you mentioned that venues are a critical focus for Motorsport UK. And we have got another question here from Stephen Harriman from Hagley and District Motor Club, who asked us this. What does the future look like for grassroots and minority motorsports events, and most critically, venues?
Well, I think, it's always been this way. Venues do come and go. But I think people are far more conscious now of the environmental impact, the noise, etc., that venues, motorsport events at venues create. So we have a responsibility to use venues responsibly. Clubs have got sort of access to lots of venues themselves, and it would be sensible to have a collaborative approach with these venues as well. But as far as retaining places and fighting our corner, we support wholeheartedly from here. We've got a legal team that will help in planning issues. So if there are clubs facing a challenge, we're there to support them. We've worked very closely with the MOD in the last couple of years now and created there's a complete register now, isn't there, Hugh, of all the venues that they have accessible and the ones that are friendly towards us. And I think that's growing as well. As they see we're not sort of create a lot of problems for them. We can use a venue when they are not using it. We're responsible clubs and members, and I think that's a positive sign. So yes, we are losing the occasional one. They're going to build a housing estate on it. It's like private aircraft as well. Private airfields, they've got the same set of problems. Yeah. People sort of think, there'll be a nice housing estate, and they move on to it. But we will fight our corner. We'll give all the support to the club. If they have any problems, they've just got to contact us, and we will put the legal team behind it to help them fight the planners. And we've won a few cases like that already. I think you can probably give a few examples. I don't know, Hugh, I don't know myself, but...
Yeah, well, there's just some examples on the screen here. There's many more, but the two Dishford Airfield and Templeton our airfield are both MOD sites, which are new to motorsport, and that's all to do with the MLOs, the local MLOs, liaising with the local MOD officers, but also from the central management of the relationship with the MOD. We've built relationships with the very, very senior people within the MOD and having that circular relationship.
And Hugh, I saw you at the Historic Rally Festival as well back in, well, it wasn't the summer, was it? Back in October, and you were inside a rally car as I was, and we were just wistfully discussing how nice it was to see stately homes back on the agenda. But how fantastic to be able to reclaim some of that magic of the past, the golden eras, with Weston Park getting so involved as well. You loved that, I know.
It was fantastic on Weston Park. I think it was 93 or 94 was the last time it was used in the REC Rally, or the Rally GB. Or Lombard Rally it was, I think, by then, wasn't it? Amazing venue, and the thousands of people, tens of thousands of people that turned out in terrible weather to see the cars. And those venues lend themselves, there's a certain sort of majesty to them, and you bring top-level rally cars and historic rally cars into those venues, and it certainly invokes, real excitement. But, there are things that we're specifically doing in regard to venues, and again you can see on the screen here the first step of that was creating a database. I mean, there's a lot of things that as a management team that we've sort of uncovered that have not necessarily ever been really looked at, and one of those was venues. We didn't have a database of all the venues in the country, and so just building up postcode by postcode exactly where all the venues are, describing what type of discipline of events take place there, because until you know the facts you can't actually do anything about it, you can't protect it. And that's a shareable facility for clubs to be able to know where different venues are. Toolkit, so providing clubs with the tools to be able to go to land developers, go to farmers, if you want to run an autocross, to be able to go to the farmers and to be able to have the right documentation available to be able to present to them. Club experts, we're building up a network. I talked about the MLOs before, but a network of club expert on venues to lend their experience to other clubs as to how to protect a venue or how to get a new venue. And then in those case studies, I just mentioned a couple there, but it's really important to understand, well, what happened over there? How was that protected? How did you get this new venue there? So there's a whole team of people that are working on this, and very, very important.
Without giving too much away about the sort of the direction that the working group's taken on the World Rally Championship, one of
please feel free to give plenty away.
one of the recommendations is that we should look at more linear routes and less of the sort of returning to a base, which would allow us to go back to use some of these stately homes in the UK and look at a route that was somewhat different to the one we've had in the last times we were here with the World Championship.
Well, I do like the sound of that. And I have to say as well, it comes right back, speaking to the team today, to that idea of connecting the community together by putting these experts and these people that know in various areas where the venues are that they can use together, which is, from a club competitor's point of view, a stakeholder of the sport like you, is absolutely fantastic. Now, David, another thing that you've touched on already this evening is the importance of volunteers. And like me, you are amazed at how much time and effort people will put into organising an event, and that shows with the quality of the events and the scale of them growing year on year. But just how important are volunteers to our sport?
You can't emphasise enough how important they are. They're absolutely at the centre of everything we do, and it's interesting because when we talk to, Hugh comes with me a lot of the World Championship discussions, the World Motorsport Council discussions we have with other members around the world, and they're always in awe of what we achieve in the UK on a around the country basis. The fact that we can organise so many events at weekends all around the country, and right, Scotland, Wales, everywhere, and it only happens because of those volunteers. And it's interesting to see, and I can't remember the numbers, Hugh perhaps remembers the numbers, but we've actually seen a very interesting change in that area as well. I'd always used to think they're all people my age and, we've had nothing else to do, but, and it's an ageing population. It's not. We're getting younger people being participated. We're getting far more female participation. I went to a local kart meeting not so long ago, and there was a family there. There was one person on timekeeping, there was one looking after the sort of organisation of signing people on, there was another one scrutineering, and it was a family activity, and they were getting as much fun and enjoyment out of doing that as if they were participating in the event itself. So it's no, I'm in awe of our volunteer force, and I just think that without that we don't have motorsport in this country.
Having spoken to Sue Sanders, who heads up the volunteers here, she was very proudly telling me her story of how she got involved 2 years after you got involved in rallying, David, when she first did her event as an official. And she is so passionate at creating more opportunities and really bolstering the way we can recognise all those volunteers. Hugh, clubs always seem to be putting out messages to say we need more marshals. I see emails all the time saying if anyone can marshal on this, because they're all helping each other find marshals for stages. It looks like we don't quite have enough marshals and we're always on the hunt for more. What is Motorsport UK doing to support clubs in bolstering those ranks?
Some of it, I talked before about 13 different disciplines and a fairly extensive geography in this country. And it's, to some extent, having the right marshals in the right place at the right time. And where we do face issues, it tends to be when you've got a number of events which are clashing with each other. And I was talking about rallying before, and I think one of the questions is, should the rally steering group have a greater control, the championship steering group have a greater control over the management of the calendar? And that's a perennial discussion, but when you're faced with resource issues, it may be something that needs to be really thought about in more detail. But also I talked before about a digital platform, a CRM platform, where you've got a database which is showing where the events are, what resources are needed. We're used to a digital world in our everyday lives, and yet in motorsport we're still pretty antiquated in terms of that facilitation of use of resources, if you like. But there's a number of other things, with David talked about the age profile. And I make no apologies for the fact that we have got an older profile, both in our volunteering community and officials community, but also our competitors as well. And because I actually see that as a competitive advantage versus a lot of other sports, because we're not competing directly with people who are in their 20s and 30s and competing a lot of the time. Yes, karting is for teenage kids, but a lot of people that come to motorsport do so when the kids have left home. They're empty nesters. They've got the time, they've got the money, whether it's in volunteering and officials or whether it's in competing. And I don't think that's a problem at all. What I do think we're missing is getting more females involved in the sport, both on the volunteering side and officials, but also on the competing side. And that's something I talked about before with getting more young girls in. So that's looking a long time into the future, which I think is really, really important. But we've got grants for clubs this year for them to be able to run recruitment events. So to be able to go to the local fair, the local county fair, and to put an easy up, if they want to get money for banners and for pop-ups and things, we're there to provide that. So they should be submitting that. And the young officials and cadet program has been really successful. So although I'm embracing the older community, we do need to get the kids in, and we've got over 250 11 to 18-year-olds now who are registered in cadet marshalling, which is really, really exciting. And we've created a young officials committee now specifically to focus on that, because we always need a committee, don't we?
We do. We always need a committee in this country. My 16-year-old has just done the online training for the marshalling. If you've got a youngster and they're quite interested in motorsport, get them to go on the Motorsport UK website, get them to do the online marshal training course, because it's a lot of fun and it'll give them a bit of a flavour as to what they could do if they do sign up as a marshal. David?
I do think one of the things that's beholden on us, Hugh, is not to burden our clubs and our officials with a plethora of bureaucracy. I know it's not easy in a world that's sort of full of insurance and legalities and all the rest of it, but we have got to find ways of stripping out what we can to make their life easier.
Sure. And
any ideas the clubs have got to come up with on that basis, we're here to listen.
Now, turning our attention to sustainability, you can't turn on the TV or open a newspaper these days without reading about the future of motoring being electric. And that poses naturally some questions for motorsport. The position, David, that the future is electric only, how do you feel about that?
We don't believe it. We believe the future is eclectic, not electric. This is one of my passions, the environmental side at the moment, because I see it as our Achilles heel. Yeah. And we have to address it head on. We can't just put our head in the sand and forget about it and say, don't worry, no one will notice. We have to do things responsibly. And we have to look at everything we do and say, can we do that better? Can we do it in a more environmentally friendly way? Sustainable fuels is a good example. The first proper fuel pump for sustainable fuels is 50 metres from our office here.
Zero petroleum, isn't it?
Exactly, and well, that's Paddy's business of actually developing sustainable fuels. You'll see this come in the future more and more and more. And I think
we've seen Damon Hill, haven't we, using it in a cart. We've seen the RAF using it in a jet. They're producing 30 litres a week from that small facility. It's amazing.
My cars on Dakar ran sustainable fuel for the whole event, and so we're committed to that.
Yep.
And at Motorsport UK, we've got to sort of emphasise that. We don't want to put a cost burden on our competitors and participants, but I would like to set a timeline in the not too distant future when all our motorsport activities are totally compliant with the ultra low emission zone in London, and we can drive them through Trafalgar Square and just with no fines, no penalties, and say we're totally compliant. And when we can do that, we can defend our sport to anybody. So it's there are lots of things to do, and it's not going to be easy, but we've got to recognise the problem first and then address it.
And Hugh, just looking at that variety of cars on the screen there that are powered by sustainable fuels, that has to translate to road technology, which at the heart of motorsport has always been a fundamental principle, hasn't it? Trickle down and see what you see on race and rally cars used on the road.
Well, probably the most exciting car there for me is the Phil Mills Escort, which he used on Rally Ceredigion, and I think it was used as well on RAC as well.
And his son was co-driving for him. It's such a lovely story.
It's such a fantastic story because it's using a drop-in sustainable fuel. It's a conventional internal combustion engine that then is using a biosustainable fuel. We've having extensive conversations. I mentioned I was in Scotland yesterday with politicians talking to them, and we had Mark Harper, who's the Secretary of State for Transport, who attended the Wydeen Rally with myself and the team back in the autumn. And it is quite staggering that the politicians have been fed the line and accepted that the solution is only electric vehicles. And what we're trying to lobby very, very hard with them is don't legislate the technology, legislate the outcome. We all agree we want to get to carbon neutral, we want to get to net zero, but let the clever scientists and the boffins and the petrochemical companies come up with the most cost-effective and the technologically most sound solution. And the one thing that I hang on to here is that there are 3.5 billion internal combustion engine cars in the world today, and there's about 30 million in the UK alone. You just look at the sale of new cars, and even if they were 100% electric, and maybe they will be by 2035, even if they were, you've still got decades and decades to run before the entire replacement of that car park takes place. And if you live in rural areas, the practicality, and it's freezing, of running electric vehicles, it's not realistic. And therefore, if motorsport can come up with sustainable fuels, can prove their viability, can prove the technology, prove the popularity of them as a drop-in fuel that can use the existing infrastructure of fuel stations, that's probably the biggest thing that we can do to save the planet.
I think the fact that it's direct replacement and we won't have to all be replacing our valve seats like we did when leaded fuel went out is the important thing, isn't it?
There are a couple of things here. What about the carbon calculator that you've developed for the clubs, and how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we sort of touched on this before, but in order for motorsport to survive and to thrive in the future, it's got to be a welcome part of community. The community, society, has got to see us as a force for good. And I just mentioned sustainable fuels. But we've also got to do our part beyond just the actual fueling or the propulsion of the vehicles. As every industry, every community is now seeking to be carbon neutral. And part of that is measuring where you are today, because until you measure it, you can't find a solution. And the carbon calculator is something Jess Runnicles, our head of sustainability, has worked very closely with the community, and we now have that as a tool, and really would encourage the clubs to use that very simple online device which they can use to actually just calculate their carbon footprint, and so they can begin to come up with a plan. They can see what has the biggest impact, what is the thing that they need to address first, and we're here to help them to do that and to find a pathway and find a solution.
But I would say there's also a place for electric cars in competition as well. We're down in Cornwall, sure, where we had a Watergate Bay event there. We had actually electric car set the fastest time of the day. So I think there's a place for that. I thought of going along to an auto solar actually with an electric car, because I think you'd be pretty good at that.
They're pretty heavy.
Do you know what? I just think there's some really good sound bites there. If you find yourself in the pub or at that photocopier having a discussion and someone says that our sport isn't that sustainable, maybe take a few sound bites from that and set the record straight. It's encouraging as well, coming back to the clubs, to see Motorsport UK clubs embracing sustainability. And actually one of the most unlikely clubs that you'd think of won the inaugural award last year, which was the Vintage Sports Car Club. A real set of characters. I love that club, and I love the fact that they're embracing this, because it is one of the more unlikely clubs that you'd think of. They received this year's award has been given to a club that has really put together something quite different, a robust environmental management system. They received the UK's first sustainable accreditation, and they are real forward thinkers, David. Who are we talking about?
It's Bath Motor Club, and of course they live in an environment, and Bath City is very aware of its motoring and its environmental side, and so I think they're right in the community. They're behaving so responsibly and making the Motor Club an acceptable part of the sporting infrastructure in Bath.
And we caught up with Andy Cross from the club at the Autosport International.
Hello, I'm Bath Motor Club and I'm Andy Cross. It's absolutely fantastic to have won Sustainable Club of the Year. I can't believe that we have. It's the culmination of 3 years at least of hard work, not just from me but from everybody else in the club. This year particularly is our 60th anniversary year, so we've really made it a feature of our 60th anniversary celebrations. We've got a brand new website where we brought up the sustainability side, particularly. So we're trying to emphasise the communications of it, and also our Facebook page as well, trying to emphasise the sustainability work that we do. The best thing is to start looking at everything you do and look at the whole of your business and say, what can we do? What are our impacts on the world, and what can we do? The thing that we're doing most of is really addressing the carbon footprint side of it, and we're physically planting trees ourselves. We've set up a good partnership with a company called Co-Forest, who are in a Bath-based organisation, and we work with them to try to move things forward and get trees in every year into the ground that actually represent the carbon that the use of the vehicles has created through doing it.
Great to hear from Andy there and all the work that's going on at a grassroots level. But David, how important are clubs in helping us to get to this net zero? We need them on board as well as everything you're doing, don't we?
Yes, of course. I'm sure the clubs are very aware of these issues. I'm sure, we can't miss it. You pick up a newspaper every day of the week and there's something about it. And we have a very responsible body of people within motorsport in the UK as well. So let's work together on this, because we can pioneer ways forward. And I'm sure that, and I know that the rest of the world is looking at British motorsport as an example of what we can do. So I'm looking forward to the next few years, because I'm sure we're going to sort of achieve my ambition of driving through Trafalgar Square with all our racing cars and just not paying the fines.
You know what, I'm looking forward to that one as well. Middlesex County Auto Club will be pleased as well with you, Les, getting in the way of some of their plans this last year, as they told me. Now, we have got time for one more question. We've had quite a few, and the team will do their best to reach out and answer some of your questions directly if we didn't get to them this evening. But Simone Birch from the Association of Land Rover Clubs wants to know, hopefully a very simple one, are 2024 yearbooks being issued to clubs? Hugh?
Yes, they will be, and it's an apology on our part, on behalf of our printers. It was simple human error that, unfortunately, some of the files that were used in the printing of the books for the first test run proved to not be of the right resolution. I mean, it was as simple as that. And so we had to go back to square one, and it's put a delay in the system, and we apologise, but yes, service will be resumed as normal.
That's the right answer, isn't it? Gentlemen, this has been a really fascinating chat for me, and I hope that people watching at home and our clubs have got a real insight into the scope of work going on behind the scenes. I got a first-hand look at that today, and genuinely, as a stakeholder, it's easy for these two to say it, but I've been really impressed by what's going on. I know some of the people, I've worked with some of the people here before, and I know how passionate they are, but I didn't realise quite how much was going on behind the scenes. And always remember, it's very easy to criticise, but actually sometimes just ask the question, what is going on? And hopefully you've got a feel for that tonight. Can you give us start with you, David, and move to Hugh, if I can get that out correctly. Can you give us a bit of a feel for what 2024 holds for us in Motorsport UK?
Well, obviously at the top level, we've got some great British drivers racing in sort of Formula One, and we've got Elvin to cheer on in the World Rally Championship. But we've also got some new initiatives coming on the scene. Hugh and I went to a World Motorsport event earlier in the year, and we were told there's this Eco Rally event, and we thought, let's just have a go at that. It sounds better than sort of standing around chatting. And off we went in electric cars, bit of regularity, but also they're measuring the amount of energy you're consuming as well. And that event is going to be, we're pioneering an event in Scotland coming this year, and then there'll be a sort of championship for the FIA the following year. And so it's an interesting example of how motorsport can evolve with the times and embrace electric vehicles. We've got the Motorsport Games, the FIA Motorsport Games down in Valencia later in the year. An opportunity for, it's a bit of a copy of the Olympics, if you like, but it actually embraces the whole range of motorsports, and an opportunity for club competitors to participate in that as well. So I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that through Revolution and other means of communication to clubs.
And Hugh, I've seen how hands-on.
What David didn't say was that we took part in this event, this Eco Rally. And so me driving, David, world champion 1981 co-driving, and we won the thing.
A bit of luck, I think, there.
Definitely a bit of luck.
Is he as good as Harry?
Luckily, we weren't going that fast.
Hugh, I've seen how hands-on you are behind the scenes here, and indeed, as I arrived today, you made time to tell me just how much was going on today alone with workshops and various meetings and things. Operationally, as far as our clubs are concerned, what can they look forward to on a more domestic level here at Motorsport UK in 2024?
Well, I talked about the staff, the people we have in the organisation. I hope we're getting more and more responsive, better and better at looking after our members. And my view is that you can never be good enough. We've always got to improve. There's always room for improvement. And that's the culture that we have here. And we don't always get it right, but trust me, we have a passion. There's a passionate community here. I think you saw it today with many of the people that you met. And they're passionate about doing a good job. So we want to work with the community. That's really important to us. But there's a lot of things that we're doing this year. I think one of the things that I'm really excited about is the evolution of Rally Ceredigion. I've got family connections to Aberystwyth, wonderful part of the world. And it's amazing what a very small organising team have done on a tiny budget to create what many people have told me is one of the finest rallies that they've ever done. And these are international competitors coming from all over the world, and those roads are absolutely amazing, closed roads. And the fact that it's now a part of the European Rally Championship for 2024, getting us back on the international calendar is really, really exciting. But the other thing which I'd sort of conclude with, and touched on it before, I think for 2024, the biggest thing for me to land is our digital platform. It sounds a bit dry, but actually if we can get that working for 2025, it will join all the different elements of the sport together in a way that we've never been able to do before.
And I think it's important to mention as well that where we are now, your impressive headquarters is open on a regular basis for members and members of the public who are interested to see what you do to come in. The Bicester Scrambles, for example, are a great opportunity for people to pop in. And in fact, there's always a photo of the Motorsport UK HQ in some way, shape or other on the photo collections from that day. But you do want to invite people to come in and actually speak to the team, don't you?
This is their organisation. Yes. We are there to serve them. So they're welcome at any time.
Absolutely. And I would emphasise, that we're an executive team or a staff at the headquarters here, but we have 330 people on our committees, and they meet here physically at least once a year, if not twice a year. And so we're frequently, this place is buzzing with people from the community, and as David says, it's their building.
Thank you to both of you. I'm sure you'll agree. Two gentlemen who are really putting in the steps, the hard yards behind the scenes to make sure that we have a brilliant season of motorsport in 2024, but that the future is also looking very bright for us as well. And thank you to you for tuning in. Thank you if you sent your questions in advance, and for those of you who sent them tonight, some really good questions. And as I mentioned earlier, the Motorsport UK team will look to reach out to you if we didn't manage to get to a question and it's burning and we do need to get that issue resolved for you. So we will get back to you on some of those questions as well. Thanks again for joining us. Enjoy your season of motorsport. On behalf of Motorsport UK and the hard-working team behind the scenes here, have a safe and successful 2024 season.